Hey there, my name is Shane Craddock, and this is the Inner Edge podcast, where I share a different take on how to lead and live a sustainable high-performance life. Over the course of different episodes, I'm going to challenge the belief that tension, stress, and struggle are essential to success and creativity. My experience is that there's an easier way, there's a better way, and indeed there's an essential way that we need to explore for the times that we live in. So let's go ahead, let's jump in and explore. Hi there. As I'm just recording this particular podcast, it's, I suppose, a day after I did my Create One Day event, which is a new type of annual kickoff event that I've been thinking about for a while, and I'm very pleased with the way that it went. Really great group of people coming together for a good chunk of a day to step back, step out of the noise, learn some new things, explore themselves, and see what they'd like to create for the year ahead. Now, we covered lots of different ground, and I'm always fascinated with the group. Again, it's just the value of in-person event is always strikingly different to an online one. There's something extra that is very human, that is intangible, but maybe the most valuable, because with it comes a sense of community, but also there's an energy that brings in creativity. And then very often I'm curious to see, well, what does it spark in me that I haven't prepared? And my favorite is I prepare almost for half of a day, and then I just go with what comes in. Now, one of the concepts that really struck a chord is what I want to talk to you today about, which is the headline of this podcast in a way, is that you don't always need a vision. And it's okay not to have clarity of vision. Now, that might surprise a lot of people who've known me over many years, because I'm probably seen as the guy who helps people get clarity on a vision and then helps them achieve that vision, which would be true. But also, I'm somebody who, I suppose, has personally experienced the value of actually not having a vision. And for ambitious people, not knowing what's next or where they're going can often feel unbearable, because they tell themselves an unhelpful story about it. And that's what I want to explore a little bit here today, see if it resonates with you, because I think it's a very human thing. I think the Western world in particular is very much consumed with goals and vision, and you have to have a clear why. But that's not really what I've experienced in my 25 years of what I do. And I think somewhere along the way, if you're into this kind of area, just reflect on this, that there's kind of like a message in terms of, if you're a good leader, you should know everything. If you're doing well, you should be clear. If you're on track, you should have a vision. And then if clarity fades, it's not just that we feel uncertain. It's like maybe we feel like we're failing or there's something wrong with us. And that's where this concept of mental fog comes in. And mental fog was discussed a lot, actually, during the One Day Create event. But what's true is, not knowing what's next doesn't mean you're lost. It often just means that the old map you've been working on or working from no longer applies. So I think the distinction that matters here is that lack of vision isn't the problem. The problem is usually how we interpret that lack of vision, i.e., how we react to it and the story and meaning we put into that. And most ambitious people, most high performers, most leaders, in my experience, treat unclear vision as a threat, as in it becomes a problem that they now need to solve. So they'll often do one of three things. One, they'll force a plan. So regardless, they'll just put themselves under stress. And because they're stressed, they will create a plan, but it generally won't be the best plan. Number two, they might borrow from somebody else's clarity, as in if they're not clear, but somebody else is clear, well, I'm going to go with them. And of course, I don't need to tell you the problems in that. That's often the start of a cult or going in the wrong direction where you lose yourself. Or number three, they panic internally. They see it as a problem, and perhaps they overwork, they overthink to escape that discomfort rather than seeing the value of that discomfort. But clarity under pressure is usually borrowed, and it's false. And real vision, real aligned, authentic, intuitive vision that's true to you doesn't ever come from force. It comes from that inner alignment. And often what I've seen is that alignment often comes after a period of not knowing, after a period of mental fog. That feeling where it's like, ooh, I just don't really have clarity of direction here. And in my experience, most people don't struggle because they lack vision. They struggle because they're trying to protect maybe an identity that no longer fits for them. Maybe there's internal feedback saying, no, what you're trying to create, what you're trying to do, where you're going, actually, deep down, it's not right. And so maybe in that context, the fog sometimes is feedback. Now, I was going through a phase myself of experimentation about 10 years ago at this point. I'd achieved many goals that I'd set myself. A lot of my visions had happened. Now, some of them hadn't, but many of them had. But it still felt like something was missing. And I think over time, I realized that my vision, while it was fun at times and good, it was kind of coming from my ego of what I thought success was. But I ended up kind of with this gnawing question, is this it? It just felt like there was something missing. And it was very limited on reflection, because ultimately I wasn't connected to the real me. I was connected to this vision of what I thought the real me was. And that was why it felt empty. So I ended up in this sea of confusion. And many times I'd react to that and create a new vision and then get busy with new vision. But I wasn't really addressing what my inner system actually, I think, was trying to communicate to me. So I ended up experimenting with saying, okay, do you know what? I'm going to embrace the fog. I remember a few months after I started this experiment, which was uncomfortable, but I stayed with it, being okay with not having clarity of direction. I remember a client asked me, what's your vision, Shane, for the coming time? And I was a little bit sheepish and I said, but I was honest and I said, look, I don't have a vision, which shocked him because he was like, but you're the guy who was on about vision. What do you mean? I said, well, look, I'm experimenting with the new thing. And it kind of confused him. I wasn't quite sure if it was going to damage my standing in his mind. It didn't, as it turned out, which was good. But what was interesting was, I think over the next few months, as I started to care less about having a vision, what was fascinating to me was that the fog cleared. And what came through, honestly, was a more authentic vision for the next phase of my journey. And from then, I have kind of embraced periods of fog, mental fog, where I'm just not clear. And instead of reacting to it, found it hugely benefit just to sit with it and just go with it, knowing that actually it's a kind of a natural part of life, of my own inner system. And I'm curious, as you're listening to me, would you relate or would you be open to experimenting with this yourself? Because to me, mental fog isn't a malfunction. It's an inner experience, often of being between chapters in your life or your work, or maybe a symptom of a very, very busy mind, an overthinking mind. Now, often, sometimes, like the old direction that you've given yourself no longer fits. You're getting feedback that says it's not fitting you anymore. And maybe this is a new vision hasn't fully formed yet. And the mind kind of loses its reference points, which is uncomfortable. Now, if you listen to me long enough, you'll know I will say you're not your mind, you have one. So we don't want to be listening to the inner voice chattering away, getting lost in that will make the fog worse, or we'll react to the fog and make it worse. If you react to the fog emotionally, make it a problem. It makes the fog thicker. So if you can imagine almost that you're at sea, you're on a boat, and fog comes in, you're not lost. You're still at sea. You just can't see that far ahead. And the key is, if you're a good captain on a yacht, you don't need to see the destination to keep moving. You just need a general sense of even short-term direction. They do need presence of mind to make sure that they don't, bang in or hit to any obstacles like rocks. They need to look at their instruments. They need presence of mind. They might slow down. They might take their time a little bit more, but they always know at the back of the mind that eventually the fog will lift. Now, to me, as a human, it's the same. But very often we might keep going at the same speed. Maybe the fog, what if it's feedback to slow down? Still take care of yourself. Just look for the next step. All I need to do is see a few feet in front of me, and I'll just move in that direction. Take it slow. And I think on a simple level, I give you a little fog guide, is like not to, when the fog comes in, don't be concerned about creating vision, but just make sure you don't sabotage yourself while maybe a little baby vision is forming, an authentic vision. A fog guide to me would be, okay, slow down, slow the pace, shorten your horizon, how far you're looking ahead. Reduce unnecessary decisions unless absolutely necessary. Focus on your body, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual. You don't need certainty in that situation. You just need steadiness, presence of mind, and inner clarity. And inner clarity always beats directional clarity. In time, if you stay with inner clarity, eventually directional clarity will come back in. That just seems to be true. And I'm speaking from 30 years of experience around something like this. So what about you? Like, where might you be demanding vision before it's ready? Like, we can force vision, but it'll generally come from our ego. What I find more powerful and more meaningful is finding a way to connect into your intuitive vision that's more aligned with the real you, not this self-image you. And what would change if you allowed yourself to be in a chapter of not knowing and kind of go, do you know what? I'm just in a phase where I don't know. And that's okay. I'm okay. I'm just kind of I'm in the boat. There's fog. That's okay. I'm just not going to react to it because I know eventually the fog will lift. Because what if the fog isn't a problem, but a natural transition? Now, it might be feedback as well, as I say, to slow your mind down, be more present. So whatever that means to you, it's just, okay, I'm just going to go easy. Take care of myself a little bit more. And what I find fascinating and funny almost is that when we get less attached to having a vision, that very often what happens is, you start caring less about having the vision and natural vision starts to come in. Why? Because I think your mind is clearer, you have fresher eyes, it's easier to see reality. When you can see reality, it's easier to understand what is the best vision, both business and personal. So consider this. Maybe you don't need to have a clear vision to move forwards. If you have one, great. At that Create workshop, at the end of the day, some people had real clarity. They could see the ocean ahead. They could see where they had to go. And others didn't. But what was good this time was, a few people said, actually, I'm aware there's mental fog. I don't have complete clarity at all. And do you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm going to be patient. Because ultimately what you really need is presence of mind and the courage actually to stay in the fog if it's there without panicking. Fog is human. It happens. It's often just feedback or, as I say, a transition. And vision doesn't necessarily always disappear. It's very often there. And it comes in when pressure leaves, internal pressure that we often put on ourselves. That's it for this week. Ciao for now.